father-in-law, Frank Carter, he kind of took over the film over here and transferred it from 8mm film to video because the old film was getting pretty old and brittle, and we had to do something with it. Anyhow, he's the instigator of taping this on video, and he I'll try to not interfere when there's reading to be done, but there's a lot of other stuff to be added to it. This was taken actually in 1950, 51, and there was 2 patrols to leave the coast and proceed interior. One started at Unalakleet, which is down about at the mouth of the Yukon, and the other one was up at Kotzebue, which was Junebug 1 at the junction of, well, the juncture of the Kobuk and Noatak rivers. And the project was to, in the summertime, to see if troops could be moved across the Arctic there in the summertime. Prior to the trip itself, I took a flight over. This was about the first part of June, and we flew over the area that we were to traverse over, and this is the airport at Kotzebue. It's a landing strip there. You can see that it's still icebound and it's cold, but it is starting to thaw. And this airstrip is a little ways out of town there. It's a gravel spit is all it is. In our actual flight, they took us over here in the C-46, but this was a Beaver that we flew over on this particular reconnaissance. Now that's leaving Kotzebue, sitting eastward, and in actuality that's the Kobuk River and the Noatak River where they join in a little bay down in there. And this was the first thing we could see. The sand dunes there in brown, where the snow has been melted, they stretched for about 30 miles. We proceeded along that on the upper side of the mountains there. That's the Warren Mountains behind it, proceeding eastward. We followed the Kobuk River approximately 300 miles east before we left that and headed for the Koyukuk. Now before, like it says here, we had about a month to practice on this, and we knew that the water crossings would be our biggest obstacle, so that's what we concentrated on mostly because we had rivers and of all sizes to cross, and bodies of water too. So we started practicing on this about a month in advance. We started off with using just, we'd make a frame out of willow, and we carried a tarp there and would use that as our boat, but it was awful rickety and it was dangerous. And on one crossing there in the Little Chena River, we almost lost a man because he went down in. Now this is the troops. We were in separate tents here. The 2 patrols practiced this month together. Now this is the first trial run we had here was on the, this is the Kananau River right out of Eielson where we were stationed. And it's a pretty good sized river. And this is building the boat. Had to make a frame out of the willow, which are all over Alaska there. And that's our piece of tarp that we'd fold around it for buoyancy and keeping the water out. And you can see she's a little wobbly when you, this is quiet water here, but it was, anyhow, the Army did give me $1,500 for emergency equipment, so the first thing I did, I went into Fairbanks and the surplus store and I picked up a 2-man life raft because this would not work on the crossing the main Kobuk River, especially on the upper reaches. We had machetes with us, and we just manufactured the paddles right out of birch or wood or whatever we had, because we knew we weren't going to carry paddles. Every ounce, we had 55-pound total weight on our packs, and every ounce we cut it down to a minimum. So we did have to have the machetes, and we had the wood we could make paddles with. As a matter of fact, on the pump on the inflatable boat, we didn't carry the pump because that was about 8 ounces of extra weight. Now your feet are wet all the time here. This is a partial trip on our cross. We had a 30-mile round back of Isles, that was Ladd Field around back to Moose Creek Bluffs. And this was a kind of a showdown trip. This is on the Little Chena River. That's an old trapper's cabin there, and we made the crossing here on an old moose crossing, as you'll probably see a little later. But this was the first time we made a crossing, and that's where we almost lost Davis, in this little stream right ahead there. It was awful silty. You can see moose tracks on the other side where they use that for a crossing, and this is shuttling the boat back and forth. We had combat wire with us. We had a big roll of that. It was very light. It's communication signal corps uses for phones, but it had a high tensile strength, and that's what we were. It was light and strong, so we had a big roll of that, and we used it on the crossing mainly on the Kobuk River, or whenever we had any crisscross, because we'd have to either get a cable across or shuttle a boat back and forth. This is a rest on the way in. Now this is on the main Chena. This flows through Fairbanks, but it's about 30 miles out of town. And we hit this in a nice campground, and we were early on our schedule, so what better place to camp than right here on this river? Wet feet is a constant plague there, because your feet, you're going through muskeg tundra all the time. Now this is the main street of Kotzebue. This is where we actually started hiking from. We flew in the C-46, and it's the largest Eskimo village in Alaska. What you see drying there is beluga whale. The white ones are fresh. The dark ones are a few days on the racks. And in Alaska, we could always smell the villages a half mile before we'd ever get to them, because of all the fish and the food drying there. They're getting ready for the following winter. And the women, as always, are doing the work. Now their dogs that they use in the wintertime are staked on a chain, about 3-foot chain in the ground, and that's all they do all summer is sleep right by that chain. They give them a piece of salmon, dried salmon every day, and that's all they get to eat, and they just sleep. These are a couple of little Eskimo kids fooling around there by the kayak. And then again some more beluga whale drying. And that's their dogs. Now this is in the land of the midnight sun. That's the main street of Kotzebue at 11 o'clock at night. Kotzebue is about 150 miles north of the Arctic Circle. And well, between Nome and Point Barrow, we're about halfway. That's a sealskin boat there and a whale rib. The weather up here changes very drastically and in a short time. In 2 hours, why, you could have the sun shining and next year sopped in or storm coming. And that's where most all the storms originate, are up here around the Gulf of Alaska. The boys did pretty good with the young Eskimo girls here, because this was the last time they didn't see any girls for a long time. The Eskimo girls, when they're young, are real cute, but as soon as they hit about 30, man, their teeth are worn down from chewing sealskin to make the mukluks, the boots, and form clothing, and they just wear their teeth down. They're almost to the gum line. That's Davis on the left, and Sergeant Jones, he was the next in command on the right. Now we got on the boat there. The ice broke on the 4th of July, and this is the 5th of July that we're able to cross. We have to go up the Noatak River and drop off. That was our point of origin as far as walking. And Kotzebue is set like a miniature San Francisco, with the Noatak River, which is large, coming in about where the Napa River would be, and the Kobuk comes in from the kind of mostly the east, like the Sacramento. And now we're getting up on the Noatak River. We went up about 10 miles, and he dumped us off on the bank there. This is still going up the Noatak River. As you can see, the weather is hanging low. We had a lot of this kind of weather. We got stormed in one time, 11 days. We couldn't see where to go. And of course, we had no supply air. We had a little L-19 that supplied us on the whole trip. That's the Eskimo that dropped us off. And when he left, we were on our own. And we were down here in low ground, and it started raining. You can see we're all wet, cold, couldn't build a fire. As a matter of fact, that was about the worst day we put in. Morale was, these guys were saying, what did we get into? Not very comfortable, and it was cold. As a matter of fact, well, that's low ground there. The river, we try to head for higher ground, and this is just getting up, starting to climb up. Our first village from Kotzebue was Kananau, which was about 90 miles, and I think it took us about 10 days to make that. That's an Arctic tern there. You'll see some of us wore cloth behind our necks under a hat, and that's to keep the mosquitoes from chewing on your ears and your neck. The mosquitoes were just horrible, and the no-see-ums, which is a little gnat. I think this was our first night camped out. We hit a little grove of trees, and that's where we decided to spend the night. And of course, it was raining. The only gear we had for warmth was a wool sweater. But it's amazing, after being out in that weather after about a week or so, your body adjusts to it, and a lot of times we didn't even wear the sweater, and several times it did get up to 70, but generally it was around in the 40 degree range. This is the first high ground that we reached, and sun broke out, and we felt a lot better, and I think we're waiting here for our first airdrop. We climbed quite a ways from down that flat. Now the airdrop was L-19. He had free drop from his wings. He had D-rings on there, and when he hit a certain point, he'd pull a cord and release the rations. Generally were 5-in-1 rations. He'd drop us two portions of 5-in-1 because there was 8 of us. And there was never any food left over, I can assure you that. But anyhow, this plane, we'd try to hit a saddle somewhere where he could come in. His stall speed was about 65 miles an hour, and he'd come in like we're in a saddle right here, and with a drop-off down below, so that when he made his drop, it'd take him a while to pick up airspeed again and get his elevation to a safer degree. This is up a lot of shale domes up in this area here. This is still between Kotzebue and Kananau on the first lap. Here comes the plane with his first drop there. You see the D-rings and the rations are dropped free fall, and then he goes down into that below the saddle there and picks up his airspeed and goes back home. Now this is a kind of going in that